Hi everyone, my name is Liz Treadwell and I am part of the HeroX Challenge Success team. And today I'm going to show you the various features and functionalities you have available to you when you utilize the HeroX platform. So what you'll see here today is actually a live challenge. It's a HeroX sponsored challenge from the perspective of someone who's an admin, or basically someone who created the page, or someone who's a moderator. So there'll be a few things, that we'll go over here in terms of the, the regular user, the person who comes to your page to sign up and actually submit what they see. But for the most part, everything that you see here, including the edit button and the entry section here, these are only visible to you on your public facing page. The rest of it, overview, guidelines, timeline, etc., those are visible to all users who land on your HeroX page. So most of this stuff is customizable, such as the image, the title of your challenge, the short description, what categories you select that you feel like your competition or challenge is associated with, as well as the prize amount. Other sections that you get to customize are the overview section, which provides some background on what you're looking to achieve. The guidelines, which goes into the details of your competition, if you have multiple phases, how many prizes you're awarding, and how submissions will actually be scored. The timeline will go into more detail later, but it just outlines the different milestones associated with the competition. Updates as well will go into a little more detail, but these are just public ways and private ways, which you'll see for you to communicate with your community. The forum, which I will highlight here, this is where users can ask questions to you, the challenge sponsor, or they can interact with each other. So this is a section that you'll want to definitely moderate or keep an eye on throughout your challenge. But it's a really great way to increase engagement on your challenge. And then lastly, the last section here for the teams or the innovators, we publicly list, who is actually signed up for it. So you can see who has registered as a user or a follower, and if they've won a challenge previously. And then for you as the challenge sponsor, the entry section here, when you start receiving entries, you'll be able to see them populating here. The only areas that you can't customize are, the buttons, what they say, the colors, things like that. All that remains as is, but any sort of these text-based sections, those are available for you to customize. So before we dive into the edit section, I'll show you what it looks like when a user actually registers for your challenge. So meaning they've landed on it, they're interested, they want to submit a solution or an idea. All they have to do is click the Solve This Challenge button. And on the next screen, they're taken to your legal agreement. This is a separate section in your edit dashboard that I'll be going over. But we have 4 template agreements you can select from, or you can create your own. And all they need to do is scroll to the bottom. And then this Accept button will highlight, and they will be able to move forward. If they don't want to accept, they just have to click this back button, and then they won't be registered. But once they scroll to the bottom of the agreement, click the Accept button, they can then choose to create a team if they want to work with others on their submission, try seeking a team to join a team that's already been established, or they can just sign up as an individual, which I will go ahead and do. And then, so the buttons have changed a little bit after they've registered. To begin their entry, they just click on that button that says that. And then they're taken to your submission form that you've created. And once again, another thing I'll show you here momentarily. And then they can fill it out and then save it and submit it. Or if they decide maybe they want to join a team or create their own team, they can just click that button. They're then taken to our team matching section. You can see people have listed themselves as looking for a team to join. Teams also have the option to look for innovators. On this particular challenge, we don't have anyone that is yet, but then they can add themselves, or they can go ahead and create their own team from this section. So just a great way for users to collaborate with others and submit a winning solution. So we'll go ahead and move into the edit dashboard. This is where you as the sponsor or challenge creator will be able to make all those customizations like I mentioned. So a lot of these sections I'll go ahead and skip over, but I will highlight some of the ones that are, important or have really interesting functionality. Once you sign up as a HeroX user, and if you want to try kind of playing around with the sections or diving deeper into some of the ones that I skip over, you'll see this launch challenge button or link at the top of the menu, and you can click on that and you can start creating your own challenge without any sort of commitment up front. So you can draft one, and then you're not committed to launching it or paying our platform fee until you're ready, that is, at least. So the first section, description, this is where all that kind of front-facing information goes, like the prize amount, that image, your short description, and then the overview text. Same thing with the guideline section, it's very basic looking. But I did want to go back to the timeline, like I mentioned. This is where you'll put all those milestones related to your competition. So we have enter, which will notate when the submission form opens, when people can start registering and actually submitting. Registration closed, you would use that if you wanted to cut off when new users can sign up. However, registration closed will leave the submission form open to anyone who is currently registered. Submission deadline would then cut off access to the submission form, so people are no longer able to submit. You can notate when judging opens and closes. This will also allow the judges access to the submissions and then close down access to submissions. And then the one event, once you've actually selected your winners, they will publish automatically once that date and time is triggered on the timeline. Closed event, you probably won't need to worry about. That's only if a challenge closes without selecting a winner. And then if you had other events that you wanted to notate or other milestones that you wanted noted on your timeline, you could add those here. So it's just a custom title. So if you had a webinar or a halfway point that you want to notate, you could include that here, and then with a description or a link to register for a webinar. Other events don't trigger anything automatic. They're pretty much just vanity or just for informational purposes, whereas the enter event, registration, submission, so on and so forth, now these trigger those automatic things on your page. So automatically your page will open and start accepting submissions. Submission deadline will automatically close down access, so you don't have to take any additional action on your end. And then other versus other and no countdown basically means you won't have a days until this particular event displaying on your challenge. So most people just use the regular other event with no countdown. All right, so that's the timeline section. Next up, I wanted to go into the updates. This is a great way for you to communicate with your challenge community. As you saw, they post publicly on your page, but then they also send a direct message to anyone who is following or has registered as a competitor. So they'll get an email as well as a notification up here in their notification bar, and then it'll show up publicly to anyone who lands on the challenge page after the update has posted. So they'll be able to see, what's been going on before, they landed on it. And you can see we have some that are scheduled. So I'll show you what that looks like. To start a draft of an update, you just put in your title, the content of your message. As you kind of saw, HeroX likes to use it for deadline reminders. Once again, if you had a webinar, you could post that information as an update. Some people like to announce their judges via updates as well. So that's a really great way to just, increase the transparency and let people know what's going on with your challenge. And then from there, you can have it just post right away. So just click publish, or you can schedule it out ahead of time. So you saw a lot of our deadline reminders are already scheduled. So you can take care of that ahead of time and not have to worry about it. And then you can also disable commenting on an update for whatever reason. If you didn't want to have to monitor the comments on an update, you could disable them. However, we do encourage you to leave them open because it's a good way for people to ask questions and things like that. Okay, and so the next section that's really interesting and I think very useful is the metrics section. And from here, you can see just all the data related to your challenge. So the first one, for community, you can see how many people have signed up, either just as a follower, so they didn't accept the legal agreement. That's what a follower is. Competitor is someone who has accepted the legal agreement and then has access to the submission form. And then submitters are people who have actually submitted an entry already. So you can see how your kind of trajectory is going. If you're continuously getting new signups each week, or if you're having a dip or a drop off, you'll be able to easily see that. You'll notice at the top it defaults to the last month, but you can customize these dates with our date picker. Obviously, you can't go into the future, but you can go backwards and do, if you want to do the last 2 weeks, or, you can select one of these options. You can also see where your competitors are located. So this is important, especially for those who have, eligibility restrictions. You can see exactly how many people are coming from the countries that are actually eligible to participate. And then you can kind of course correct if you need to, or try and recruit more people from a certain country to join your challenge or promote it to. Something that goes kind of hand in hand with that are the web referrals section. So if you're running an ad campaign on Facebook, or you published a blog post on someone's website about your challenge, you'll be able to see how much traffic is actually coming from there. So this is, what website did people come from before arriving on your challenge? So you can see there's various other charts that you can take a look at to help you gauge how your challenge is actually performing, and if you need to, do any additional promotion. Next up, I want to show the send notification section. So kind of the opposite of the updates a little bit. These don't post publicly, but do allow you to send kind of direct messages to a group of people within your challenge community, or a subgroup. So it looks similar in terms of you put in a subject line and then your message, the variety of formatting options that you have available to you. And then you can select if you want this message to go to a certain user group. So for instance, if you want to remind your followers, hey, you still need to accept the legal agreement in order to participate, you can send those instructions to them. If you wanted to remind the people who have started a submission but haven't submitted it yet, you can message them to let them know to finish their draft and finalize it. And then you can also talk to your judges. If you wanted to communicate with them directly, you can do that here. And then you can even drill down further. So within judges, or that's not a good example, but let's say within competitors, you want to drill down to some other group. You could exclude a specific subgroup out of that, and then you can even filter by location. And then once again, schedule that notification in advance. And then you can also even send a test message to yourself to make sure it looks good. Next up is the submission form. This is where you can customize what questions you want people to answer, how you want them to prove that their solution is the best, all those good things, and then as well as upload documents and whatnot. So the kind of default fields we have here are title, short description, image, and then referral. This once again can come in handy if you're just curious how people came to find your challenge, and maybe if you run another one using that source in the future. You can disable the short description, image, and referral questions if you'd like. You can do that in the submission options section, but title is required on all of our entries, which makes sense. And then from there, you can add additional fields. So we already have several created for this particular challenge, but I'll just show you what a new one would look like. You can ask for them just to write out text, either with or without formatting, or maybe a shorter answer. You can ask them to provide a link, either to a website or maybe a resume or something like that. They can also upload documents. HeroX does not restrict, for the most part, any sort of file types. So you can really accept anything. That includes, CAD files, things like that, as long as you have the proper reader on your end. And then you can also actually limit what types of file extensions get submitted. So if you want to just accept PDFs or Word documents or CAD files, like I mentioned, you can put that here. Otherwise, the field will accept anything. So obviously you don't want to, you want to limit the amount of low quality stuff that's submitted. So make sure to maybe put something in there to help prevent against that. But then you just put in your field title and then some additional description. I'll show you an example of some of these above here, just like a link to their past work. And then you can see the text formatting, tell us about yourself or tell us about an assignment you worked on. And then you can actually notate, how many characters that they have to be able to write out their answer. And then if that field is required, and if you want to hide the field from your judges when they go to evaluate. So mainly hiding fields from judges would be if you were asking for, geographical location, date of birth, or some other personal information that the judges didn't need to see. You could actually hide that from them. And then we also have the option to add a drop down so they can, select yes or no or whatever you're asking them, as well as check boxes. So we have a variety of submission form fields that you can choose from, which is really great. And then lastly, you can also put section headers above groups of questions. So if you want to divide up your submission form into, eligibility, your solution, and maybe something else, you could put that header above so users know, what the next, few questions are going to be related to. Okay, the second to last section I want to highlight will be the judges section. So when you get your submissions and you're looking to select your winner or winners, all of our challenges have some sort of judging panel. If you're a company, that can be people within your own company, maybe some external experts that you recruit. And this judges section is where you invite them to join your challenge and get them set up so they're ready to go and they have access to the submissions that get assigned to them. So you just click this invite button. More often than not, you're going to use the invite by email. You can invite them one at a time or use a comma and separate multiple email addresses to send a bunch of invitations at once. Or if they happen to be a HeroX user already, you can locate them by typing in their username and selecting them from the list. And then if you want to include an additional message, they're going to get an auto email from HeroX that just says, you've been invited to become a judge on this challenge, accept the invitation here. But if you had additional instructions you want to include with that message, you could add that to this field. And then you click send invitation and it will send them that email. And from there, you can actually manage your judge invitations. You'll be able to see who's accepted, who's declined, and then who has not responded yet. And those who have not yet responded, you can actually resend the invitation very easily from this section, which is great. And then we have a separate video in our knowledge base that goes over how you assign judges to entries, what it looks like when they are actually judging them. So I encourage you to go down to our knowledge base, which you can actually get to from this need help button if you want to see what that looks like. It's very, very robust and easy to use. Okay, the last section, which I mentioned earlier, is this legal agreement section. This is where it's determined what happens to the intellectual property of the winning submission or submissions. So in this case, IP is transferred to the sponsor. That's because for this particular challenge, we're asking people to create videos for HeroX. So we want the rights to those videos, obviously. But we have 4 other template agreements that you can choose from. More often than not, I'd say 90%, maybe even higher, maybe 95% of our challenges use the innovator shares IP. So the innovator still gets to keep their intellectual property rights, but the sponsor does get a license to use it. Some of them also will occasionally use innovator keeps IP. And then very rarely, of course, except for in our case, is IP transferred fully to the sponsor. And then even more rarely does IP become open sourced. But you can use one of these template agreements. You just click generate agreement. I'm not going to click that because I don't want to mess with the one we already put in here. And then, oh, went back a little too far. And then it generates that text that we saw when we registered as a competitor. So you're welcome to use this as is, or like I said, you can delete all this text out and just put in your own. If you want to make changes to this particular agreement, you can do that as well. Of course, just be aware, you should run it by any sort of legal counsel, especially if you're a business, if you're making any significant changes. Otherwise, all these agreements have already been reviewed on our end and will stand up to any sort of scrutiny. All right, so those are all of the features that I wanted to highlight for you today. Like I said, if you ever want to go in and just start kind of drafting a challenge yourself, maybe diving into some of the sections I didn't cover, like the FAQ section, after you've signed up as a HeroX user, you'll see this launch challenge link. And then when you go there, you'll be able to start creating your own challenge, and you can mess around and see the different features available to you. And hopefully then you'll decide to launch a challenge.